Hello, everybody, and welcome to It's Tea Time with my good friend Tony Westwood and myself, Neville Gawn. And this week, we're going to talk about Tony's beard. In fact, no, we're not going to talk about Tony's beard. We're going to talk about one of the times where Tony and I were on stage, one of the big golf shows in the UK, and Andrew Johnston, or as everyone knows him as Beef, came on the stage, literally to answer some questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Tony because he tells this story far better than I do.
Morning, Neville. I hope everyone's well out there. It's really interesting. One of the sections of the golf show, Andrew had been there to open the show, and he was absolutely amazing. He stayed around the show all day when we were down at Blue Water. Anyway, some of the young golfers had been asked by the golf show organisers to put their name forward to come on stage and ask him questions about his career, obviously about his golf game, the kind of things he works on. And they were pretty much the stereotypical questions we expected to get. Anyway, there was 3 or 4 children on stage, and we went through the usual thing. How do you practice? How much do you practice? What do you enjoy the most about your practice? And all those kinds of things. And we were just kind of wrapping up thinking, right, okay, that's fine, that's great. Has anybody got any more questions for Andrew? And this little lad put his hand up, and he just said, well, I've got one more question. I says, okay, what's that is? And thinking we're going to get something really great for the audience at the end of this little section. And the little guy says, how many tee pegs can you get in your beard? Well, I looked at Beef. At that time, I didn't have a beard. And obviously, Beef has got this big kind of bushy beard, far bigger than mine. And we looked at each other and was like, total curveball, eyes rolled. And we thought, well, should we find out then? So I went over to my golf bag, happened to have a load of tee pegs in there, picked up this handful of tee pegs. Well, the next 10 minutes on stage was absolutely fantastic as these kids, as a brother and sister and 2 others, and we were really trying to push tee pegs into Beef's beard. And it was absolutely fantastic. And it just goes to show that the unexpected can happen when you least expect it. And certainly in that situation on stage, we had a lot of fun. The audience weren't expecting it. Certainly Beef wasn't expecting it. But we did discover that you can get something around about 15 tee pegs to stick in his beard.
And it was so funny when we were doing it because he sort of rolled his eyes and thought, I've never had a question like this before. But he went with it. He went with the flow. And that was great because the more he went with it, the bigger the audience that was coming around. And I suppose the topic for this week is about change. Can you handle it even when it comes from left field? Well, he clearly could handle it. And this is what we need to be talking about golfers. Golfers need to handle it too. And obviously, in business, you need to handle it. I mean, let's face it, the last few months of COVID have been torturous for lots of people. They've been pulling their hair out. And like you and I, well, they haven't got much hair left. So, although I do notice you've been growing it below. What's this for transplant purposes? You're going to do...
Look, I'm hoping it spreads up into the top.
Yeah, I think that might be a bridge too far. But anyway, coming back to change, okay? And one of the things we went into our little routine, immediately everyone went off the stage and Andrew was signing autographs on the side. We asked that classic question, do you want to improve your golf? And everyone around the stage, because it's an interactive discussion. There's hundreds of people standing around the stage, big stage, by the way. And it was square. So we had to literally walk around all the 4 corners to get everyone engaged with us. And without exception, I mean, all the kids put their hand up immediately, as kids do. They all volunteer for everything. But eventually all the adults did as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah, actually, I'm here to learn something. I'm here to change. And then the next question we asked was, so are you prepared to do something different? And you could hear a pin drop because it's almost like, well, I'm quite happy with what I'm doing, but I want to change. And all of a sudden you've got these 2 stories going on and you could see it with everybody. there's a lot of noise going on in the exhibition, but around the stage, it's really quite quiet because people are thinking, oh, I've got to do something different. Well, yeah, I suppose so. And eventually the hands start to go up. And I suppose that's the interesting thing, isn't it, that we found is that although golfers come to you as a coach and they want to improve, when you ask that question, because that's where that came from, you have the same problem every time they come to see you, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, a number of times I get asked that question. Somebody walks into my coaching space. They're obviously there because they want to improve. Something isn't working. They want to try and learn a different shot. They want to hit the ball further. They want to hit the ball straighter. And invariably, they'd like to do it without changing anything. And I explain to them, well, if you'd already knew what it was, you'd already be doing it anyway. So how can we possibly help you to begin to understand what needs to happen first? And I think the biggest challenge is, as we've spoken many times where they've been traveling to and from golf shows and how we set up our routine for stage or what conference we've been at, is helping people to understand that just because there's so much information out there doesn't mean you can pick up a book or watch a video and realize what it is you've got to do. Because anything that's ever been written has been written by somebody else based on their experiences, not on your experiences. So we're working with people who come to you or me with their situation at that moment in time is exactly where they are. We've got to help them expand where they are to help them to begin to understand how they can move forwards. The challenge is they don't realize the change they've got to make. Because a number of times I've stood there, and this is a classic really, when I've said somebody's coming in, they would go through a really good question and answer process at the beginning. I explain that it's for two reasons. One, I'm nosy, and two, because I want to understand what their world is like. I've got an idea what my world is like, but I need to know what their world is like. But I now give everybody an I don't know card. So at any point in time, if I ask a question that they think they don't know the answer to, they can say, I don't know. Now the pressure's on me then to find the right question because I think they do know the answer. So we start to move forward. So I say, so what's happening? And you get the classic, oh, well, I'm hitting all my shots are curving off to the right. Every shot, it curves off to the right. I say, okay, brilliant. Let's have a go then and see what's happening. So they stand there and they'll hit the first shot and it'll go dead straight. And they'll stand there, they'll hit the second shot and they'll go dead straight. And they'll hit and it'll go dead straight. And at this point, I normally interject by saying, God, that's a really bad slice you've got there. And you can really see them getting frustrated because they've come to me because they've got this slice. And now when they want to hit the slice, they realize they can't hit the slice. So they might hit another 2 or 3 shots nice and straight. And you can see them getting physically angry inside and saying, I don't normally do this. I don't normally do this. And then all of a sudden they'll hit the slice. And this big smile comes across the face and go, hey,
yeah, I did it.
And I then have to explain to him, I said, well, but how can we possibly put that right? Was when you've been explaining to me you've been hitting this slice, you couldn't actually do it. So we can't actually move forward until you actually know what it is that is happening. And when we know what is happening, then we can begin to change and move forward and do something different. And I think that for them becomes kind of a light bulb moment. They realize they haven't got control over what is happening and that change has to happen.
And we see this all the time. And, you know, when you and I first met and I observed you doing your coaching, it's really hard to stop laughing because it should be fun anyway. And everyone that we get on the golf course, or, you know, whether they come on a course with us or they're doing the one-to-one with yourself or myself, they do have fun. So, you know, let's make sure everybody out there is, we're not laughing at anybody, we're laughing with them because, you know, the game is supposed to be fun, despite the fact we all get very frustrated with it. And you mentioned the fact that we do get frustrated, you know. you come to someone with a problem and you can't repeat it. And it's the same in business, because we're seeing a problem that manifests itself all the time. And then certainly over the last few months with COVID, I'm sure we've seen more than our fair share of problems, more problems than we ever thought were possible. But then when it comes to repeat them, there's something different every time. Something has changed out there. And part of this is it's our attitude to change that needs to change. Because one thing that we do know, certainly playing golf, is that nothing is going to be the same. The wind came in from the right. Well, normally it comes in from the left. Well, if I'd have been more aware at that point in time that it actually came from the right, I'd have changed my stroke accordingly. But this is about it's the attitude. It's the being agile, if you like, as all leaders should be. But let's go back to the golf course now. So what you and I always talk about is you need to experience doing things so that you can put them in your memory bank. So why don't we give our listeners today an experience that they can have, a routine, some practice shots that they can go and do on their own. They don't need a golf coach. They can go down the driving range and do on a regular basis to get more comfortable with their swing and ultimately start to improve.
Well, one word you mentioned really importantly then, Neville, was always. And most golfers play in a space where they always do that on a particular hole. And the reason they always do that is they keep telling themselves they always do that. And then history does tend to repeat itself. And when they don't do that, they don't give themselves any credit for doing something different anyway.
Yep.
So I think the key thing is over certainly the last maybe 4 or 5 years as we've been working, I've been getting golfers to really think about understanding that every golf shot is a golf shot. If you can understand what creates every golf shot, then you can begin to understand exactly what you need to do more often. So I talk about it now as being like a recipe. So we know we need to have a physical element. There's how we need to move, how our arms move, how we hold the club, how we connect to the club. There's a technical element of understanding what happens when we hit the golf ball, and there's a mental element as well. And it's just like a recipe. If you've got the recipe for the best chocolate cake in the world, if you use the same ingredients, mix them the same quality of ingredients all the time, the same length of cooking time, every single time you can make the best chocolate cake in the world. And a golf shot is no different. But people need to understand what all the other golf shots are, because golfers live in a space where they have good golf shots and bad golf shots. But they don't know the difference between the good golf shots because, like I said earlier, the person who's standing there knowing that they normally slice it now can't slice it because something has changed, but they don't know what has changed. So it's a really, really simple drill I would recommend every golfer does. But it can be uncomfortable to get there. And as we know, change in any environment can be uncomfortable. And that's why businesses don't change as quick as they'd like to change, because it involves the people involved in that environment wanting to change as well. So here's what you do. You go to the driving range, you get your golf balls. You might start with a nice simple drill first without a golf ball, interestingly enough. So what you do is you address the golf ball. Good one for golfers who might occasionally top the ball. So they swing the club and it's too high up the ball and the ball stays quite low. So it's great for new golfers. It's just stand on the carpet. Imagine there's a golf ball there. Swing the club, make a full swing. And when you come back down, miss the carpet. Dead simple. Swing back, miss the carpet. Now go back down, start again. Address that imaginary golf ball again. This time, swing the club and hit the carpet. So now to swing the club and miss the carpet, and then to swing the club and hit the carpet, you had to make a difference in the swing. So one swing, when the club head got to the ball, the club head had to be higher on one swing to miss the carpet and lower on another. So straight away, you've created an understanding of what happens when you swing the club and hit the top of the ball, and when you swing the club and go low enough to hit it up in the air. It's the difference between high and low. And most adults I know, in fact, most children I know, already understand the difference between high and low. But the problem is they don't think it can be that simple. But it is. And I've had people who top the ball constantly actually not be able to top it when they stand in my coaching bay because they don't know what it is. And they don't think it can be as simple as high and low until they experience it. Now, once you've done the high to low bit, flip it on its side and work horizontally. So now you're going to introduce the golf ball, and we're going to ask golfers to see if they can hit the ball to the right and hit it to the left. Now, this is really interesting. I was coaching a guy at the weekend who plays a lot of hockey, or played a lot of hockey. He's retired now. He's South African. He lives in the UK. Played a lot of hockey. And he was telling me about, he has this golf shot that when he's on the golf course, he always hits his irons to the left. I said, all right, okay. I said, so I asked him the question. And as we know, when people are asking questions, or when we're trying to communicate with people, people are listening, ready to respond. So they don't actually listen to the question that you're asking in the first place. So I said to Mike, I says, hey, Mike, so if you're hitting the ball to the left, which part of the ball are you hitting? So he picked the club head up. He says, well, I think I'm hitting it off about here on the club head. I said, no, listen to the question, Mike. He says, which part of the ball are you hitting? And he started to pick the club head up again. And he went, oh, you asked me about the ball, didn't you? I says, yeah, I asked you about the ball. He says, well, I haven't got a clue. Now, obviously, through my early question and answer bit, I'd asked him what sports he'd done, so we knew he'd played hockey. I says, I'll tell you what, Mike, so when you played hockey and you're in the centre of the field and you've got your mate Fred down the left wing and you're going to hit the ball down the left wing to Fred, which part of the ball are you going to hit? Oh, I'm going to hit it on the right-hand side. All right. Well, think of the golf club as being like a hockey stick and the golf ball being like a hockey ball, and Fred's down the left-hand side. Which part of the golf ball are you hitting to make it go left? Oh, I'm hitting it on the right, aren't I? And it never ceases to amaze me that golfers aren't making these connections. But it's simple as to why they're not making these connections is they've never been asked to. Because the answer is in a book or from another coach, or it's on YouTube now, telling them what they think they've got to do to move their arms, to move the body, to swing the club and hit the golf ball. And when that doesn't work, they don't know where to turn.
Well, they do. They turn to a coach.
Well,
and the coach confuses the hell out of them.
we know coaches can switch people off that as well.
Absolutely.
Because of what they're asking them to do. So now you've worked from high to low. So now you're going to work from left to right. So all you do is you stand there, you've got your target in front of you. You're going to swing the club, you're going to hit the ball, you're going to see if you can hit it left. Then you're going to stand there, you're going to see if you can hit one to the right. And then you're going to hit one to the left and you're going to hit one to the right. And then every fifth shot, you're going to see if you can send somewhere in between. And as long as somewhere in between is between the left and right, so it could be a little bit left or a little bit right, which could be your tendency, then we're making progress. Because the interesting thing is, golfers are living in a space where they're thinking they're doing the same thing every time, but getting a different result. Guess what, golfers? You are not doing the same thing every single time. You are doing something different. And when you understand what the difference is, then you can begin to be successful. Dead simple. Left, right, every fifth shot somewhere in between. And then you'll begin to realize that change is possible. And sometimes it is only a small change that needs to be made. And that, for me, is what's been groundbreaking for the golfers I've worked with now for certainly the last 20 years or so, is the realization that change happens to their golf swing without changing their golf swing. It changes because they're approaching it differently. And more importantly, what's happening is they're beginning to change the space between their ears because they're beginning to be more flexible and adaptable and focusing on the game in a different way. So their attitude, their mindset, their behavior changes because the feedback they're giving themselves is better. You can't. If everybody who works out there, anybody who's a leader in their business, you can't walk up to somebody who's doing a job, whether it be in a factory or a warehouse or whatever, and just look over their shoulder and go, "Oh, that's good," and then walk away. Because poor Fred, who's doing the job, hasn't got a clue what's good, because all you've just said is that's good. And the same happens if you look over the shoulder and go, "Oh, that's bad," and then you walk away. You have to give quality feedback that helps the people understand exactly what it is they're needing to do. And golfers are no different, other than the fact that they are their own leader. And if they can begin to realize that on the golf course, then real change begins to happen. And they begin to enjoy it more as we go back to that fun element. And it's really getting them to experience the world as being childlike again, to explore and discover what's happening, rather than behave petulantly when they've hit a poor shot, or negatively when they've hit a poor shot. It's just a golf shot. And I now, you've watched me on stage doing all these demonstrations now for years, and I now have a file in my own head of every single golf shot. And if somebody wants me to hit that golf shot, I can demonstrate it, but I don't do them when I don't want to, because I know what they are. But I can't tell you how I do them. I just practice them enough to know what they are.
And that's the important thing here. We're going back to, any practice makes permanent. The right practice makes perfect. So going back to this routine, because golfers love routine. We'll talk about the business side in a minute. 5 balls, hit one to the left, one to the right, one to the left, one to the right, and the last one somewhere in between. Now, Tony hasn't said 50 yards to the left, 50 yards to the right. It's up to you to go and experiment and go and practice. And the more you practice, the more you can really hone down on what left and right really means, and what's bit down the middle really means, because you never know on a golf course when you're going to need that particular shot. And that's the other thing, is because golf is unpredictable. 1 minute you're in the bunker, the next minute you're perfectly on the fairway. But even the best professionals in the world, I was watching a tournament a couple of weeks ago, and they were down to the 18th hole, and it literally was, this hole was going to make all the difference. And the first player teed off and went deep into the rough. The second player hit it literally perfectly in the A spot, absolutely dead in the right place for the second shot to count. And then the second shots came in and roles reversed. The guy that hit out of the rough literally ended up 5-6 feet from the pin, and the guy that was absolutely perfectly placed ended up off the back of the green. Well, you can guess who won. But the point is, it's the unexpected that's going to happen, and it's being prepared for the unexpected. So let's look about the business arena. What can we take back into the business arena? And you mentioned this word feedback, which we're going to talk about later on in the series, because it is really important, but we're going to be reinforcing the feedback arena as we go through. In a business, what feedback have we got? We've got KPIs. Oh, that's good, Fred. Done well there. Or that's not so good, Fred. You haven't done very well there. Or Frida, we don't discriminate on here. But Fred Learns Accounting or bookkeeping was the first book I read on accounting. So Fred is always a name that comes to mind. So how do we give ourselves better feedback? Well, like anything else, we get to know what we're doing. We get to know how people are doing. So the first thing you could be doing today, maybe, or after you've gone on the golf course and practiced to prove that what we've shown you is actually going to improve the way you play golf, is to go into your office and bring your team together and say, if we could do something different, what would we do? And then shut up and listen. And don't listen to respond and shut it all down. We haven't got the money. No, we tried that before. It didn't work. Listen. listen to what your team are actually going to say. Because believe it or not, they're the best people to give you feedback, not the KPIs. They know long before the KPIs are going to tell you what's happened. So they're going to give you instantaneous feedback. And Tony, you and I have done this in a business context all the time when we've played a little bit of practice in the golf arena. And then we've said, okay, just go back. Imagine now you're in the office. What question would you ask your team that might have a hint of change, where you're going to support that change? And that's the thing, is you've got to change your attitude to change, which goes back to practicing the golf shot. You know, if you want to improve, you've got to change something. So if your attitude to change is, yes, bring it on, let's try something, let's experiment, then you've got the right attitude. If your attitude to change is, well, I'm not quite sure about this, but I'll give it a go. In other words, you're not committed, frankly. And we see you and I constantly talk about commitment is an on-off switch. You can't be 80% committed, because you're either all in or not in at all. I mean, there's no point, and it's certainly true in the golf world. But you've got to be committed to change. So we've given you it's a very simple drill to do on the practice range. The interesting thing is you could do this drill at home in your back garden. You don't even have to go down the golf course.
You can do it in your living room with your putter. Dead simple. You'd start off with put a glass or a mug or something in 6 or 7 feet away on your carpet. It's much harder on wooden floors, but a bit of carpet is absolutely fine. And all you do is aim at your target. So you get lined up. If you've got some kind of pattern through the target, through your carpet, it'll help you understand where you're going. We'll get aiming to hit the ball at your target. But with the first putt, intentionally hit it to the left. Don't aim left, but aim straight and intentionally hit it left as you make the stroke. And then intentionally hit it right as you make the stroke. And what you'll find is that you'll begin to realize what happens when you miss putts left and miss it right. So you could start really quite small and begin to build up. At the end of the day, hitting a golf ball is dead simple. It's physics. The golf ball, we talk about feedback. The golf ball is giving you the perfect feedback every single time. It's telling you where you hit it. It's telling you what angle the club face was, and it's telling you what the contact was like. Please listen. But most golfers are listening to respond and tell themselves how terrible they are. I always do this. I can't do that. If we look at business change, those the most powerful words in business in a negative sense are, this is the way we've always done it. If this is the way we've always done it, how the hell are we ever going to get anything different? And the challenge within change, and we talk about an awful lot of that at MindFit across business change over the years, it hasn't changed because it's generally driven from the top. It hasn't come from the people who are actually doing the work on the shop floor, actually in the business. They're not being listened to. And those people, they are your diamonds. They can make incremental changes that can make massive changes to profit if they're actually listened to. So let the golf ball tell you what's happening. Trust it as being your friend, not your enemy. Keep it as simple and it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we're going to leave it today. So do those little drills. As I say, you can do it at home. You don't have to go to the golf course or the driving range. You can do all these things at home. And the one that Tony showed you earlier, you can do anywhere, absolutely anywhere. Just hit high and low. Remember, he didn't say how low and he didn't say how high. It's up to you to calibrate that distance. We'll get into calibration a little bit further into the series. But in your business, ask a very simple question, keep your mouth shut and listen. What can we do differently that's going to make this place better? Such a simple question, but don't get into that respond arena. There's always an answer. Yeah, there probably is always an answer, but here's an opportunity now to keep your mouth shut, use these 2 ears in the way they're designed to be used. That's it from us today. We'll see you next time, episode 3. We're not going to tell you what it's all going to be about, but if you can give us feedback, we'd welcome it. So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him. See you soon.
Guys, have a great day. See you later.